Hello, Candice Oneida here, and I'm here today to talk to you about using a feminine way to manifest your dreams. Or I could have called it how to be more eggy. Pushing, striving, overworking, working until you're completely exhausted, competing, fighting, chase it, will it, go for it, no pain, no gain, triumph, grasp, clutch, compete. If it's not going well, then try harder. Okay, so that's not what we're here to talk about today. That I just described is what I call man mode. And trust me, I know all about it. In fact, I pretty much spent the last 2.5 decades working like this, running businesses like this, being a corporate woman like that. So my story goes, I started as a corporate woman in Australia. I was a commercial interior designer. I then worked as a consultant for some of the biggest companies in Australia. I then moved out of consulting to just starting to run my own businesses. And I started up 5 successful companies in the last 20 years, making incomes in the range of $250,000 to $1 million a year in gross sales. I did all of that from my masculine. Does it work? Yeah, it works. In fact, I was very good at making it work. And many people, many women out there are really good at making it work. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, at what cost? This research I've done just on cancers alone in women since the 1960s. Remember, in the 1960s, when we, en masse, as women entered the workforce, there has been a 60% increase in female-specific cancers alone since the 1960s. Why? We entered the workforce. We entered a world that was created by men for men. And then we proved that we could do it, right? Women proved that they could do that, but at what cost? That is just an example of the cost, is the cost on our health as women. Now, what I first described in this video, working, striving, pushing harder and harder, never taking any breaks, this is what I call man mode, or we could call it being spermy. And what we as women want to be is more eggy. So what is more eggy? What does it look like to be more eggy? So to be eggy is to set goals, but to release attachment to the outcome. Being eggy is about setting goals and embodying what we want to feel when we reach the goal. Being eggy is about surrendering to outcomes. Being eggy is about putting our desires out there without knowing how or when those outcomes will come to us. Being eggy isn't about being lazy or lacking ambition. It's about a learning of surrender and receptivity about how and when those things will come toward us. Being eggy is about knowing that when we trust and we move forward with flow, ease and love, that the outcomes that will come from that are what we actually want and what we actually need in our life. Being eggy is about putting our desires out there and letting there be a flow, an ease and a love that has the universe, like a swarm of sperm, come toward us in such a way that we are being provided for those desires. Being eggy isn't hard, it's quite soft actually. Think of an egg, it's soft. Now, being eggy isn't easy because it requires a lot of trust. When things don't seem to be working or happening in a way that we expect, as we are learning to trust and flow with things in a different kind of way. Being eggy requires managing the anxiety of not overworking and pushing to get the results that we want. When you're being more eggy, you may believe or experience yourself as being more slack or being more in a not doing orientation. This may and probably will feel quite uncomfortable to you, but you have to create that space into which the desires, the goals and the things you want can come in. The thing is, if you lose the faith in the egginess and you start to freak out and start to go into man mode again, become spermy, the egginess doesn't work anymore. it becomes a vicious cycle of being spermy, being in man mode, and then it's harder to go back into the eggy experience, the faith, the surrender, the receptivity. Basically, egginess requires faith. Faith in the flow of life, faith in the provision of the divine, faith in the provision of life to provide for your needs and your wants and your desires. Being eggy requires of you that you play or work until you feel like resting, and then you rest until you feel like playing again. I hope you've enjoyed some of the tips on how to manifest what you want from being feminine and how to be more eggy. So I'd love you to make a comment on the video below here. A thumbs up would be awesome. I'd be super grateful. I love your comments and your questions below. I do go into the channel a lot to respond to people that write comments. And in signing off today, remember that when you shine, you give other people permission to do the same. So let's go out there and shine this week.